Is the Crafted Podcast, a podcast. Let me try that again. Welcome to the Creators Collective, previously known as the Crafted Podcast, a podcast all about making stuff by hand, woodworking, metalworking, leatherworking, electronics, and more. We publish weekly on Thursdays on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you normally look for your podcasts. You can also follow us on all of our social media pages, and we are also live streaming every week, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Just look us up on the YouTube channel, and you can join in and have all of the live chat fun. Also, any questions you answer on there can be answered live on the air. So let's hear from our host, James Wright from Wood by Wright. Hello, this is me. Zack Herberholz from ZH Fabrications.
Do I say something now?
That's for you, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Hi.
And William Walker of WM Walker and Company.
Guten Morgen.
Hey. So we're back for another episode, and this is kind of a fun one. Our first actual episode as the Creators Collective. And you may have noticed we now have a logo up. It's kind of a temporary one, although I don't know, it might become permanent, but we're working on that. And there's a few other things that we are also kind of working on with switching everything over. So if anything isn't working, please let us know, and we will fix it as soon as possible. So let's jump into what we have for today. Zack, what's on your bench?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it's been a crazy week. Reaching out to a lot of, so FabTech, obviously a couple weeks ago, if you guys are all up to date, was a really fun event. So I put out the C-clamp bench video. Did I put that out this week? I think I put it up. Yeah. So that was new. That was a lot of fun. That was a really fun build. I really enjoyed that one. And that video is doing pretty well. Let's see. I started recording for doing a video for the key fobs that I make. I'm going to put that out soon.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I think you've seen the little kind of rough uncut version, didn't you, James?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that one's only like, I'm kind of experimenting to do like 2-3 minute videos that are just really quick and kind of, to the point. To kind of bridge the gap, because I want to put out more. One of my goals for 2018 is just to put out more content. And the issue that I've always had is that, most of my builds are pretty laborious. They take a lot of time, and there's usually a lot of materials, and it's just not, most of the content I've put out, they're not builds that I can knock out in a couple of days, or usually at least a few weeks. And then I end up with hundreds of hours of footage to edit. So it's just a really big process. So kind of one of the things that I'd like to do, just to kind of keep the ball rolling a little bit better on YouTube, is just to have some smaller projects and videos, just to kind of bridge that gap between the bigger ones. So the key fob will be kind of a fun experiment. I'm going to put out the knife the little mini cleaver that I built with Harley at Iron Dog Knife Works last month. It's gonna be kind of a different one, because it's more of a documentary style. I really just wanted to get with somebody that knows what they're doing, because knife making and forging a blade is kind of like wizardry in my mind. There's way too much information out there. I mean, I'm sure every handy male has at some point done a Google search on like how to make a knife, and the amount of contradictory material that is out there, it just makes you want to throw your hands and give up, because there's 100 opinions on how to temper, how to quench, how to anneal, how to all of that, and all of them are at odds with each other. So it makes it really difficult to find.
And everyone thinks you're wrong.
Exactly. Of all of the disciplines of like crafting out there, I really feel like knife making is the most polarizing. It's worse than politics. Like, people hate you if you do something a certain way. It's really strange. So I just my goal for myself, and hopefully for some of the other people out there that are interested, I met this guy through Instagram, and I saw his work. If you guys run Instagram, it's Iron Dog Knife Works. Just look at the stuff he makes. It's ridiculous. So I don't care how he does it. He makes beautiful, cutlery and kitchen knives for chefs and stuff around the country. So in my eyes, like, I don't care how he does it right. It works, and he sells a lot of them. So I figure I just want to copy this guy. He knows what he's doing. So that's kind of the idea of this video I'm going to put out, is just start to finish. I want the whole process, and I want to document it. So when I go to make my knives in the future, I have a template. So that's kind of the premise for that. What about you
feel
guys?
that, if as long as you do it safe and you actually do it, then you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So many people just don't even start because they're so afraid of doing it wrong that it's just.
Well, that's the thing though. Is there's no right way to eat a Reese's, and there's no right way to make a blade. I don't think there's a right. There's a lot of wrong ways, but I don't think there's necessarily a right way. I think if it's straight, if it passes like the rock, if it gets to the right spectrum in the Rockwell scale, if it's hard enough to hold an edge and it functions, then it's a knife. So there's a lot of ways to get
I feel like if you get
Zach, we should keep William from talking.
Mm-hmm. We'll just keep waiting until every time he starts speaking, we'll just interrupt him.
I didn't have anything to say anyway.
Okay, now I'm curious.
No, I think learning how to sharpen is more important than bickering back and forth about the best way to temper and quench and what steel is better to use for knives and you know what carbon levels and yada yada yada. Because I beat my knives up. I always carry a pocket knife on me, and I use it. It's a tool. But learning how to sharpen a knife properly to put an edge on it, I think, is almost more important than the tedium between, this way to make a knife and that way to make a knife. And
Absolutely.
I've never made a knife, but
I think they're codependent because, obviously, if you can't sharpen a blade, it doesn't matter how good the blade is. But conversely, if you make a blade that is unsharpenable or won't hold an edge, then your sharpening is kind of irrelevant.
You have to mess up really big time though to make one unsharpenable.
Well, if you don't quench it and heat treat it right, then there is a lot to it. But like I said, there's a lot of different ways to get there.
Yeah.
There's certainly wrong ways, but I think there are multiple right ways to do it. And that's so don't, if somebody's trying, not that I'm like an expert by any means, but I would say it's the same with anything in any craft. If you got into woodworking and you got into whatever, if you're making stuff, there's contradictory information out there that makes it difficult and makes it really, it makes it something that seems like it's just more difficult to get into because there's so much information. But what I found is if you want to learn something, you literally just have to cannonball into it. If you keep walking around the pool and testing the water, you're never going to get in. Sometimes you just have to just dive in, and you'll probably, it'll be a shock at first because you'll probably screw some things up, but at least you'll be swimming pretty quick.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Will, do you have anything going on?
oh my gosh, I've got a lot going on. So I leave for Germany in an hour and a half. And before that, I was working on the medicine cabinet build that I talked about last week, the cherry box jointed corner book matched panel door medicine cabinet that I'm making for toolstoday.com.
I love how
so I just unboxed all their
I love how our like descriptions just every episode keep getting, like, our builds just get more and more adjectives in them.
Palletwood farmhouse.
So I just unboxed all the tools like yesterday or the day before, and got the blades on my saw, and they're awesome and sharp, and I love brand new blades because they're like buttery smooth. James, you wouldn't know anything about that because you don't use table saws. And then I just released a video this morning on I cut the top off of a bourbon bottle, and I turned a wood lid to make like a container. I saw a video from Ben Ueda a while back where he molded some lids for bottles that he cut the tops off of, and I thought it'd be cool to turn one out of wood. So just did that, and yeah, I've been totally focused on travel other than that.
So tell us about Germany. What's going on?
So my wife, I guess she's kind of a big deal in her field of quality assurance in the pharmaceutical world.
Hopefully, your wife is a big deal to you.
But she got invited to speak at this conference in Munich next week. So we thought, hey, like, let's make a vacation out of it. And so we're flying from Dulles to Munich overnight, and then we're going to hop a train down to Lindau, which is on Lake Constance, which is right on the border of Austria, Germany and Austria. And across the lake, you're looking at Switzerland. So it's supposed to be this magical, wondrous place, and we might even get snow, which would be even more magical in, like, the Alps. And then we're going to take a train back to Munich that Monday, and she's going to speak at this conference Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll have a day in Munich and see the Glockenspiel and the Hofbrauhaus and all the cool stuff over there on Thursday, and then fly back Friday.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I've actually started. There's this app called Duolingo, and I downloaded it like 2 weeks ago, and I decided I was going to try and learn like basic German. So yeah, kind of interesting.
I don't speak German. The running joke in my family is I don't speak any language until we get to the place that we're going, and then I'm the most. I guess I'm the bravest one in the family. So even though people have like taken classes in languages, they get to the foreign country and then they kind of freeze up and they go, "Will, you just go talk to them." So I feel like by the end of next week, I will speak German. So
yeah. I feel like it's funny because like the first things you learn in a language are sometimes really weird. I mean, it's like, when are you going to need to ask for milk? And like, I guess where's the bathroom is pretty important, but a lot of the times,
yeah,
it's
that's
not.
like wo die toilet, I think, in German.
Sounds good. I haven't learned that
Wo
one
die
yet.
toilet.
I've learned like she drinks milk, but I don't know how to ask for the bathroom. You think they would like flip those around, like, yeah, I don't know.
Practical language. Yeah.
Absolutely.
James, what are you working on?
Cool. I am finishing up. I'm hoping today to finish up the spring pole lathe, or at least get it to a fully functional state. So this last week was all the little mechanicals of the spring pole, the arm, the headstock, the puppet. I have left is to make the tool rest, and I can start turning things on it, which is kind of a momentous occasion.
How far out is that?
How far out? What do you mean?
The lathe?
I'll hopefully have it done today.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
I'm hoping to have the final build video on it in the next couple days, and then hoping to do I want to do like a cinematic build video and just kind of go through the whole process in one video. I think that'll be a little easier than having the whole series to watch if you want to do that.
Yeah, I try my best to put things in one video because I've done like my workbench video. There was so much to it that I broke it up into 2 different videos, and it's always weird to me. Like, I think the part 2 has like probably I can't know, I don't know the exact number, but it has significantly more views than the first part. And I always think like, who does that? How can you just like start on part 2? Like, to me, that's
They're the people
like,
who jumped at the end of a mystery book.
I mean, like, I'm happy they're watching it, but I'm like, how can anybody, like, it's like the people that can just like pick up in the middle of a movie. Like, I can't do it. Like, if I miss the first 5 minutes of a movie that I really want to see, like, I won't watch it. I'm like, nope, I have to wait until I see the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I always try and just put for my own little OCD. I just really try and put things into one video if I can help it.
I always like the one video. I like one video.
Yeah.
I try my very hardest to not do videos in parts. The last time I did that, I put a video in parts, was the Rubo bench, and we all saw how that ended. It didn't. So
we're still waiting for that.
Yeah, still waiting for the rest of the remote.
I do parts mostly because the majority of my videos tend to be more teaching, and so it makes it easier to kind of dive into a subject a bit more and talk about the details of it. But I don't do the cinematic video quality videos as much. So
I'm excited to
different
see
channels.
you take your try at a cinematic style. You know,
I do one like every
like a
6
me
months or
style
so.
video. Okay.
Do you remember the candle box I made? I don't know
Yeah,
if you
that
saw
was
that
cool.
one. I think that
Uh,
was almost a year and a half ago now.
Oh my god, it was that long ago.
Yeah, that was a
We're
fun
getting
one.
old.
Actually, the video I have coming out today, I'm not talking in it at all. It's just music and work.
Yeah, that's
And
the way I
so
like it.
that's gonna be an interesting one. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I've been trying. So, like with the key fob video, like that I just did, I wanted to do it a little bit differently and like kind of make it more cinematic, which is really hard to do with all the crappy ate up camera gear that I have. Like, actually, I have my. I don't know how well you guys can see the lens.
Spatter covered.
Yeah, there's like weld berries melted into the lens of my camera, and nobody told me that like there's a thing called a UV filter that you can just like go on there and save your precious multi-$100 lenses from just getting covered in weld spatter and like shellac and everything else that's airborne in my shop makes its way to the lens. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. some of the shots are I don't think they're quite as crisp as they would be if I had, you know, a 100% functional lens on my camera. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, other than that, I made a tote for one of my planes, and that was kind of a fun one. I've had a lot of people asking me, how do you actually make the handle on a plane and sculpt it and shape it. So I went into a good bit of detail on that, and I don't know why I like the little sculpting things like that where you're shaping handles, because it kind of bridges the gap between functionality and the human touch, and just getting the way it feels in your hand being more important than the way it looks. I like that aspect to it. But other than that, I put out a whole pile of little quick tip videos this week, and so I've been kind of getting out one video every day for the entire month. So it's been
yeah,
incredible.
I've been following along with that. That tote was really cool. I'm thinking about remaking one myself on one of my planes that the tote cracked. So that was kind of inspirational. I still might do that.
cool.
So how's your workflow on something like that? Because I've struggled to put out like 2 videos a month. That's why I'm going to try and start doing some smaller builds. But like, if you're doing one a day, like how much time do you spend, do you think, shooting, building, editing? Like, how does that break down? I'm actually really curious about that.
Well, it really depends on the video, because I try to have one big project like the lathe running. And so I'll spend a couple days a week on the lathe. And that might prove one video. Well, that's a couple days of work for one video. And so then I'll have a bunch of like detailed quick tip videos that are, you know, 1 minute to 3 minutes long. And they're shot in a single clip. And they're just, you know, here's how you use blue tape to mark out your joints better. So they don't take that much time. And editing is literally cropping them with a start and stop point, and then render it and upload it. And so really they only take 2 to 3 hours total to make the little 1 to 2 minute videos. And then I try and do a couple that, you know, take me the majority of the day. So I'm usually doing about 6 days a week of 8 to 10 hours in the shop to.
That's crazy. Like I had to edit the C-clamp bench that I did for FabTech. Like I think I edited that video all in 2 days, and it just, like, by the time I was done, I was so sick of being in this room and sitting at this desk in front of the computer. It was awful. Like usually I'll spread my editing out over like a week or 2, but I think I probably put in, I don't know, at least a minimum of 12 hours like editing that video. And I feel like I never even really realized until one of our early podcasts, I didn't really ever think about how much time I spent editing.
Mhm.
And it's crazy. I mean, you really just don't really, and I don't even do a good job of it. So like I
Well,
couldn't
then you have to
imagine
get into the uploading and the syndication and
it's crazy. Like I couldn't imagine somebody who does, like, I feel like one of my favorites is, I mean, William Walker's, like your videos are some of my favorite. They're just so professionally done. I feel like I could only imagine how much time you have to spend editing those things. Mine is pretty much just like, mine's pretty much cutting out like me cursing and like tripping and falling in my shop, and like a lot of dead air of me like figuring out how I'm going to lift things that weigh 3 times more than me. Like I cut that out, and then I just pretty much smash all of my clips into like 2-3 seconds each. So like it's really not that difficult of a process, but it still takes hours. So I could only imagine somebody who really puts you know, the emphasis into getting everything just right, like how much more time and how much more involved that would be than my process.
yeah.
So editing is definitely something that's you get better at with time, but it's this is going to sound really cheesy and dorky, but it's more about finding the feel of the video. So finding that perfect track to set the tone and the emotion and the pacing of your video, and then kind of making the story fit into that feeling. And then once you have that down, I mean, you just kind of edit to the rhythm. And do a quick color grade. But I like this last video, the I just released it today, the bourbon jar lid. I had it pretty much done, and then watched it again and realized that I hated the mood, so I deleted everything and started over. And I hate doing that, but to me, it's like I don't like to put out videos that I'm not proud of. So if I'm sitting there watching it going meh, then it's
I
like
did that on last night's video.
trash it and start over.
I'd say that's one thing that I try and do in my videos is like set the mood. Like as far as with the music, like I spend countless hours trying to find music that is one, like not like royalty free, so that I can post it and not have to pay somebody else, and two, music that isn't terrible. And both of those things are really easy to find independently of each other. But when you try and find royalty music that isn't terrible, like you have your work cut out for you, because most of it is so bad. It's like somebody like just bought like a Casio keyboard from 1987 and goes home and hits like loop 1 and sings over it. It's all that bad. It's awful. So
and then finding a good one.
I have one of those upstairs.
You should actually do one. Like just make an intentionally terrible song and to figure out a way to like make it so bad that it's hilarious, and then figure out how to work it into your video.
Cool. We actually have a few questions.
Excellent.
So Jeff Gruff asks, how often do your significant others influence or request a project?
It's usually two for me, one for her, or 2 for clients, 1 for her.
Well, so my wife is always requesting projects, and I am never making those projects.
Here's some relationship advice here.
Yeah. I just don't have time. And I mean, she gets that, but like I have, oh, my notebook's in the other room. Like I have pages of things I want to build. Like I said, that slab in the corner there, that's been there for 2 years in this room. It hasn't moved. That's supposed to be our coffee table. I bought it 2 years ago. Like, it's not a hard build. I could probably do it in, certainly under a week, like probably a couple of days, but it's still sitting there in the corner. So like my priorities just aren't, unfortunately, on building stuff for myself right now.
Yeah.
I have a truck that I'm trying to restore, and I haven't done anything on that since last winter because it's so hot. And like, that's kind of my, I don't know, priority shift, I guess. That's kind of my excuse. I when
I've
I
got
did,
a honeydew list that my wife keeps adding projects to, but they're um, I only work on one of her projects at a time, and so it usually ends up being like the big project. But recently, I've had the kitchen remodel, and then the shop remodel, and so everything's been on the back burner, and so now she's kind of like getting on. Can you build this?
yeah,
They kind of come in waves.
This is my honey-do list from last year, and notice how nothing is crossed off.
all I see is about 4 pixels because your video feed is so bad.
Bummer.
It looks like you just held up something made
A
out
yellow
of
paper.
Legos. Yeah,
It was really long.
Stick it note really close to the camera.
yeah, yep. Yeah, I can't remember. I had something else I was going to add, but I don't remember. So moving right along.
Jonathan 24 asks, I'm cross-cutting a board with a handsaw, and at what angle of a miter would it make more sense to use a rip saw instead of a crosscut?
That's an awesome question that I've never even considered before. Mostly because
Yeah.
I don't work with those tools, but still.
I think it depends more on how comfortable are you with a particular saw, because I have different relationships with all my saws, and some of them I absolutely love to use that saw, and some of them I'm like I'm loath to use that saw, but it's the best one for the situation, so I'm going to use it.
James, do you have names for your tools, like personal names?
I should start naming them all.
I could totally
Carved
picture
name and
you
all
with
handles.
yeah. All your tools have names
Cassandra and
and like faces drawn on them.
Marietta.
I could see
Yeah.
that.
She's crunky. You have to treat her well, but no, because if I am like cutting a board about a 1x3, and I'm going up to like a 50-degree angle, I'm probably still going to be using a crosscut because I really like my small back saw crosscut. I use that quite well. I feel very good about it. And I don't like my long tenon saw, which is a rip cut. So I only use that when I have to.
I would think from a physics standpoint that anything greater than 45-degree angle would be you'd be doing more ripping action than cross-cutting action, but I have not tried any of that in practice, so I have no actual useful advice, just theoretical advice.
Yeah, that's kind of the breaking point at which it's average, but I mean, even then you're still cutting through fibers, which makes it easier to use a crosscut. But you're also cutting along the fibers more, which makes it easier for the rip set. So I don't think that there is any breaking point. It's kind of a gradient from one to the other. And you can always rip with a crosscut and crosscut with a rip saw. There's no law that says you can't. If you crosscut with a rip saw, then you're probably just going to end up with more blowout on the far side, which you can clean up. And if you rip with a crosscut saw, there's a tendency to wander a bit more, and it's a bit slower. But you can do it. So I guess it's just what are you more comfortable with. But yeah, anywhere around the 45-degree angle is where you kind of break it.
What you need is a cross rip saw. Hasn't been invented.
Well, they do make the hybrid saws. They have about a 10-degree of fleam, as opposed to the 20 to 30 degree that you'd have with a standard crosscut. And they do both well, but anytime you make a tool that is okay at both, it really kind of stinks at both.
Yeah. Fleam sounds like some sort of like mouth infection.
Yeah, I got a horrible case of the fleam.
Exactly. Let's see. We do have another question for James from Evan Dunville. Are you still using the power planer? That's a good question. I haven't seen that thing in a while.
Yes, I am. I did not use it on my bench build because I wanted the bench to be completely hand tools. So I didn't pull it out for that, which I really wish I had, because that was 100 board feet of white oak to be planed down. But I am going to be doing all of the trim upstairs, and it's all hickory. and it's all 13/16 thick right now, and I need to take it, about half of it I'm taking down to 3/4, so I only need to take off a 1/16, but the other half I'm taking all the way down to 1/2 inch. So I have the choice of resawing a bunch of veneer off of all this hickory, or planing it down. So 260 board feet of hickory, about half of it I have to take off, a little less than a 1/2 inch.
And how much do you get? How much do you take off? Like, can you scrub off with a beastly plane in one pass?
Well, with hickory, I'd be happy to get a 1/16 of an inch. Any thicker than that, and you're putting too much force into it.
That's a lot. That's especially hickory.
That is a lot.
With pine, I can plane 1/8 of an inch in a pass.
That's insane. What plane do you use for that?
My scrub plane. It has a very, very deep camber in it.
I've never used one of the, like, taking off, like, even a 1/16 seems just crazy to me. I could not imagine being able to do that. I mean, and if you think about it, like, if you have to take off a 1/2 inch and you can get a 1/16 at a time, that's only 8 passes. Like, that's actually not too bad.
I mean,
probably
and hickory.
More. Yeah. But still,
well, the other problem is
with
I've got trim, and so I want to work on these 10 to 12 foot long boards when my bench is only 5 foot long. And so I'm going back and forth. I'll probably end up doing at least one window's worth of trim completely with hand tools. But then I think at that point, and especially being in the month of November, and I need to crank out videos, I'm going to be, okay, let's pull out the planer and run this down. Because that's the big reason why I got it, because I can always, I can shoot videos, but if I'm doing a step in the process that I shot all the footage I need for the video already, what's the point of me continuing to do this and I'm not actually helping any of the videos out by still hand planing all this off camera?
Yeah. Well, plus if you got to crank out one video a day, I mean, you need all the advantage you can get. That's incredible.
So that's where I'll probably be
James,
pulling out
what radius is your scrub plane iron cambered?
My main one is a 1 to 9.
It's a what?
Okay.
1 to 9. So it has a 9-inch radius on the blade.
Yeah, mine. I put an 8-inch radius on my scrub plane, and that seems to work pretty efficiently.
Yeah.
You should do a video on. Sorry, I know my lag is terrible, so it's. You should do a video on how to camber an iron.
I did actually put that one out.
Oh,
it's an older one though. It's probably a 1.5 years old. But yeah, it's one of the things I often suggest to people when they're getting their first couple hand planes is go buy like a Harbor Freight cheap junk plane, camber the iron, and voila, you have a solid scrub plane. It really doesn't take much to turn it into a decent scrub plane, because it just needs a big mouth. And
when you camber or set the primary bevel on your stuff, and I'm asking you because you're James, do you use like a slow speed grinder, or do you actually camber them on stones? Because I feel like
actually what I do is a while ago I bought a strip of 60 grit sandpaper that is 18 inches wide by 20 foot long. It used to be used on a large belt sander, a very, very large belt sander. But I actually lay that out on the floor, get down on my hands and knees, and grind it out on that. And a very heavy camber on an iron really only takes 2 to 3 minutes.
That's crazy.
Huh. And I don't have to worry about keeping it cool.
I guess you wouldn't, like, I wouldn't have thought that sandpaper would take off more material than like a coarse stone.
Oh yeah, like a 60 grit, like when I'm flattening a sole of a plane, I'll start like a 30 or 40 grit, and that will just march through steel incredibly fast.
Crazy. I have a slow speed grinder that I use, and I have like the Veritas, I don't know, whatever their blade sharpening contraption that you use on the tool rest. It works pretty well, but like getting getting a perfectly even camber is actually a lot more frustrating than it should be.
Well, that's the nice thing about a scrub plane. It doesn't have to be an even
Yeah,
camber.
yeah,
It just has to be somewhat rounded.
yeah. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
finesse work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that being said, I'm gonna do that on the floor with a 60 grit, and then I'm gonna spend a while on like a 100 grit paper on the floor, and then I'm gonna go to the stones. And so the 60 grit kind of gets it close. The 100 grit gets it the shape I want, and then the stones refine the edge. So it's a process. But yeah, let's see. Gregory Hickman asks, "What is one project that was impetus? What was one project that was impetus for you? What's that?
Impetuous for starting your journey as a woodworker.
Is it impetuous or impetus?
I think it's impetuous.
Impetuous.
For starting your journey as a woodworker.
What was the most? Yeah. Okay.
Wow. For me, that goes all the way back to Boy Scouts. Making the car.
Like the pine.
Yeah, except for I made it out of oak.
Those are the words I was looking for.
But I mean, at different stages, I've had different things. Like before I went into college, I made my dresser, and I did a lot of work and practice for that. And I made my dresser, which I really liked. And then when I got into hand tools, it was making the coffee table. And so every step, there's been a key project that has been kind of like a turning point in my design and education.
My answer is kind of the same. I mean, not
I think
particulars, but like you said, I feel like every project has been like a stepping stone, or at least like there's certainly been a lot of those. And I mean, even just, it's crazy because I've only been doing this really, let's see, I'm looking at my very first YouTube video, which was March 23rd, 2016. And I started out with the most simple, like dumb little project just to like do a video and post it on YouTube. And it only has 3,000 views. It was like a little dog leash holder. It was just my first time ever recording anything, and I put it up there. And even going back there and looking at like the types of projects, which to me were like kind of big deals at the time. I made like a ampersand for our wedding. That was the second video I put out, and like that was huge. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I made this. And that was like a little over a year ago, and now like I'm traveling around the country and like doing live builds for stuff. It's just incredible. Like I didn't know how to do anything that I'm doing now. Like if you'd show me any of the projects I've made in the past 6 months to me a year ago, I would have been like, there's no way I could ever build that. So I feel like it's just everything is a stepping stone, and it's really incredible to watch the progression. And that applies to anybody. If you guys are just getting started in this, like,
yeah,
stick with it, and you will not believe what you'll be doing in a year from now. I mean, it will blow your mind. I never, ever would have thought that I'd be doing this and building the projects that I'm building. It's crazy. So, I mean, I can't pick out any particular projects. I feel like they've all been kind of milestones that have given me the confidence to further develop, whatever direction they're heading in. Yeah. So
what about you, Will?
I feel like mine was a little bit backwards. So one of my first projects in my old shop, which was a 14-foot by 14-foot shed behind my parents' house, was this 5-foot tall wine rack that I made for my wife. But the wine rack wasn't the problem. The problem was wood selection. My dad, who's a contractor, had this deck build going on, and they were using Ipe, which is Brazilian teak or walnut.
Yeah, I was just using Ipe
and Kumru. Yeah, so it's super hard. Like it's ridiculous. It's really hard on your tools. And he had some scrap Ipe, and he said, "Hey, do you want this?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll build a wine rack out of it." Well, drilling out 4-inch radius holes or I guess diameter holes, to make the scoop to hold the bottles of wine with a hole saw and a cordless drill in Ipe. I went through 2 drills on it. I burnt out the motors on 2 drills trying to get all these holes drilled. So that was kind of the start of my woodworking journey.
The impetus of your woodworking journey.
Yes. And so I learned a lot there, and have since learned don't try to make your first project out of Ipe.
That's, you know, I think one of the fun things when you're starting out, I guess it's probably wasn't fun at the time, but when I look back, before I had all of the tools that I have now, like I started out before obviously doing YouTube, like I had pretty much I had a drill, like a 20-volt circular saw, the battery powered circular saw. And that was pretty much it. And I built so much stuff with those 2 tools, and like, it was a lot of fun because it makes you think differently. Like how it makes you come up with creative ways to use these tools. Like how can you do something unique with a drill and a circular saw? So, I mean, I feel like I was certainly a little bit more creative in my building process back then when I was limited. And if you think long,
those are the 2 tools.
Go ahead.
Those are the 2 tools that I recommend to anyone that wants to get started in making things.
Absolutely.
Because you can take them outside, throw a couple of sawhorses down, throw an old door or something on top of some sawhorses, and with those 2 tools, you can make a lot. And coming from a background in construction, that's like those are the tools that you usually had on the job site. You might have had a job site table saw or a nail gun, but the circular saw and drill were like the 2, that and a speed square were like, okay, so the 3 main tools.
Yeah.
So anyone out there listening wanting to get into making stuff, ask for those for Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think it's time for the joke of the week. And this one comes from Jonathan42. What type of machine will never need glasses? CNC.
Nice. we had another one that I was actually going to read, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it because I like it. This is from Jeff Gruff. How do trees access the internet? They log on. All right.
But
Yeah.
Moving on. So what are you reading, watching, listening to? Will, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so travel books on Bavaria. That and Mike Boyd from Learn Quick, who is a delightful Scottish man who tries to learn a new skill from scratch, and he videos the whole thing, like how to wheelie a bike or how to throw a hatchet or how to go mountain biking. And he sets a goal for himself. It's really cool. And he's got this awesome accent. It's Learn Quick. So, how to wheelie a bike. And so he'll set a goal for himself where he'll say like, okay, this is day 1, hour 0. I'm going to learn how to wheelie a bike 30 meters. And he goes through the whole process, and he's like, all the frustration, and it's just really, really fun to watch. And whenever he nails the thing that he's doing, like he has these ridiculously over the top celebration, like jumping up and down and screaming and hooting and hollering, and it's just really fun. That and You Suck at Cooking. I don't know if you guys have seen this channel.
No, I like the name. It's catchy.
It's amazing. Go look it up right after this. You Suck at Cooking. So it's this guy, and he's totally dry and he makes a dish, whatever, how to make a pumpkin pie. And he'll go out in the woods and he'll be like, all right, I'm just out here searching for a wild pumpkin. Oh, there's one. Let me do my pumpkin call. And he'll take like a cardboard tube and be like, blah, blah, blah. and then have this pumpkin like rolling to him. It's just, I don't know. It's ridiculous. I can't even explain. Just
Sounds
go
like
watch
you
it.
just gotta watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
How many
I've been
games?
actually watching a channel by Matt Estla, and he did this really weird, cool cabinet was bent. It was a while ago, but he's been putting out a lot of YouTube videos recently and getting into it. But really doing a bang up job. He's from the UK and has that great UK accent. It's fantastic. But it really a lot of fun to watch. But if you're ever wanting to, learn tips and techniques for woodworking in general, very hybrid, a lot of hand tools, a couple power tools, really, really cool channel. So definitely look up Matt Estla.
I've been watching
ESTLEA.
him too.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I want to. There's a lot of YouTube videos of people making wooden mallets. Like I feel like it is the new cutting board of YouTube. Like everybody has a mallet video. However, I found what I think may be the best mallet I've seen on YouTube, and guy by the name of Chris from Third Coast Craftsman is his YouTube channel, and it's super cool. Like he actually, like, just the design of it is really sleek. It's definitely unique looking. Like the handle, he makes his own brass little collet to join the handle to the mallet. It's I don't ever want to watch a mallet video, and this one, like, I would never recommend anybody to watch more mallet videos than they've already seen, but this one's definitely worth checking out. It's pretty cool. Also, I've been reading a whole lot of books lately that are kind of regarding branding and marketing, because that's just kind of something I really want to work on with my own materials. I'm starting to create some more like accessories and stuff, trying to fill out my storefront. And there was a really good one called "You Are Your Brand." That's one of the, it's a really quick read. And I honestly got it and I opened it up and I'm like, oh, great. It's one of those books where somebody's just trying to make a book with no content, because like a quarter of it's all like blank worksheets that you're supposed to answer questions. And I just assume like, oh, this is like one of those, how can we get to 100 pages with as little writing as possible? But if you actually work through it, like, there's some really important questions in there that I think if it's something you're interested in, as far as like how to kind of convey your product, whether that's your videos, yourself, your whatever it is, it's certainly an interesting read. It's really quick and it's worth your time. So that's
Cool.
That's what I've been doing.
Well, for a tool of the week, I've got a live center. Normally you just have a live center on the tailstock, and it just freely spins and has ball bearings in there. It's basically just a pointy thing that spins. Really simple. But on mine, I actually have two live centers, one on either side, which is kind of if you've ever done anything on a lathe, it just doesn't make any sense to have two live centers. But it's a cool little device. And,
But you kind of need that for the spring pole, right? Because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
power,
Well,
the power doesn't come from the end of the lathe; it comes from the spring pole.
Yeah, most spring pole lathes, the plans just have you get a threaded rod and grind it to a tip, and so it just spins on a tip. But then that creates friction against the wood against the ground up tip, whereas a live center just makes it far smoother.
That makes sense.
Zach, you have anything?
I do. I'm trying to copy the link right now. So my tool of the week is it's actually the Hero GoPro 5.
Ooh.
I have had it for a while. I think I bought it like probably 4 or 5 months ago, but it's starting to work its way into more of. Hold on, I'm typing and thinking and speaking at the same time. It's not working out for me. There we go. Okay, I'm ready. So I'm kind of figuring out more creative ways to incorporate it into my videos. This sounds like a sales pitch, but like, honestly, I think the video that I'm getting from my GoPro 5 is cleaner and crisper than what I'm getting through my DSLR. And that might be due in part to the fact that 30% of my lens is covered in weld spatter. But nonetheless, like I really like the footage, and actually I think the fisheye effect that I get from like the wide angle actually kind of makes my shop look cooler. It just makes it look, it gives it like some depth and dimension in some of the shots. So I've pretty much been using it. I guess the thing that I really like about it is, one, I can get really close in the shots, but two, like I really like the time lapse feature. Like I just think it comes out and it looks awesome, and it saves me from having to edit down. You know, if I'm doing something for an hour, I don't have to import an hour of video and shrink it down into, you know, 20 seconds for the time lapse. I can just, you know, the time lapse will condense it automatically into, you know, a fifth, maybe 20 minutes or so. So it just makes the time lapse shots a lot easier on my part. So yeah. Cool.
Will,
if you ever Zach, if you ever want a not wide angle time lapse, grab an intervalometer for your camera, for your DSLR.
What the hell is that?
And you can set it's intervalometer.
Okay.
So you can have it take a photo every 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever you want. And then it's pretty easy to put them together in post to make a time lapse. That's what I do for like my star shots, like my star trail
Cool.
time lapses.
So does it import as individual pictures, and then you just have to like sync them up to play as a video?
Yeah, so you can either do it through Photoshop or Premiere, or I don't know what you're editing on videos, but iMovie might be able to do it. But if you can open the images as a sequence, so you just select the folder that they're all in, and then it imports them as a sequence and plays as a movie, and you just tell it what frame rate to go at. So 24 frames per second, or whatever you prefer.
Cool.
But little tip from a photographer.
Good to know.
My favorite tool this week is the Amana Prestige Series dado stack that Tools Today sent me. I put it in. I had only ever used a pretty dull dado stack, so that when I put this on my saw, my table saw, and started cutting some box joints, I was like, whoa.
What were you like?
So, whoa. All right, last time. Yeah, so I'm having fun with that.
Cool. Well, I think that about does it for this week. And so I want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon, particularly our top patrons this week, Make, Build, Modify, Master of None, and Deby, Brooke. Thank you so much.
And extra shout out to Master of None I want to give an extra shout out to Master of None. He was he helped us all out a little bit at the FabTech event. He actually, I couldn't get a lot of footage of myself doing things because it was a crowded, cramped environment, and he got some, and I actually used it in my C-clamp bench video. So thanks.
Very cool. Love the audience. You guys really make this worth doing. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
So that's about it for today.
Awesome.
Until next time. See ya.
Auf Wiedersehen.